Good afternoon, folks. We are finally live once again. Let me get everything switched over to the correct layout, and we will commence what may result in art, maybe not. There we go. Let me turn on the background music. We are running through the standard BGM playlist today. Spotify display still isn't working, but all the stuff here is currently what's been released so far. How's everybody doing today? I see Red Dragon's here. What's up, Red Dragon? Good to see you again. Iconic? How you doing, Iconic? Welcome to the stream. How did your Balitro runs go, Red Dragon? Have you gotten a clear run yet? Red Dragon was streaming Balitro earlier, so I popped on his stream briefly to see how he was doing. Red Dragon says, doing okay, you? I'm doing fine. I had to go to the eye doctor. That's why I had an appointment earlier. And my eyes are dilated, so I actually can't see things very close right now. Everything's kind of fuzzy, which is going to make drawing a little bit weird, but it should wear off as we get into the stream. Bertrand says, nope, was falling asleep, so I had to stop. I see. Yeah, it took me a bit before I was able to beat a run, but as you unlock more useful stuff in that game, then it gets a little bit easier, and then you unlock additional difficulties and stuff. Iconic says, I'm well, thanks. Hope you're good, Raku. Yeah, I can't really complain. It seems like it's been a while since I streamed, just due to there being a lot of schedule conflicts last week. But it's good to be back. We had to move things to today at the last minute yesterday because of work, but we should be on track for a regular schedule. Tomorrow is going to be more SMT5 Vengeance. And then Saturday, Red Dragon and I are going to resume Elden Ring and hopefully beat the boss that we were stuck on last time. All right. We are going to do some concept sketches for the Halloween project like we've done before, but we're going to start with weapons first. So let's do the Angelic faction first, which, since last time, I have settled on a name for the Angelic faction, and I want to shout out Red Dragon, who had sent me some suggestions in Discord, and I adapted one of the names that he came up with for the name of the faction. So the Angelic faction, or Divine faction we've been calling them, are going to be the Aetherian Legion. And my writing is terrible, I know. I will mention this eventually when we debut the project as well. But it's kind of a fitting name that goes along the line of a Divine / Angelic faction, and then the other one is going to remain the Natural Order. Iconic says, family wants to watch a movie together, so gotta go. Super sorry for not being able to stay. Hope you have a great stream. Hey, no worries, Iconic. Thanks for popping in and saying hi. Always good to see you. Hope you enjoy the movie, and I'll definitely catch you in the next one. All right. So we haven't done a ton of concepting for the Legion. I'm going to call them the Legion just because their name's a little bit long. And we got Hydrate from Iconic. But we'll start with a little bit of concepting for both factions, but we'll do the Legion first. So like we talked about, we want to focus on kind of Western slash medieval inspired weaponry. Hold on one sec. My alarm is going off for some reason. There we go. Oh, my radio going off in the background. So what I was saying was we want to focus on kind of more of a like a Western medieval style of weaponry. And I figured I'd start with the most generic thing for weaponry that we can do for a faction like this, which is going to be on theme. And I think we do some interesting stuff, is swords. I don't think every character is going to be a sword wielder because that would be boring. But we can definitely experiment around with the idea of kind of your archetypal swords and then add some flair to it that's going to be unique to what the Legion's kind of about with their sort of biblically accurate angelish type look. So this one kind of reminiscent of like a falchion. Maybe a medium length blade, a bit more kind of flared and wide instead of narrow like a regular broadsword or even thin like a rapier. It's been a hot minute since I've fired up my tablet. Might have to recalibrate it. But if we're just doing some sketches for now, it should be okay. One thing we talked about when we were discussing the concept work for the Legion's forces, again, taking the idea of biblically accurate angels and the like for their character designs, which we'll do some character sketches at some point. I'm not going to spend the whole stream working on just weapons. But the idea of too many eyes is definitely something I think would be fun to implement on the weapon concepting in addition to just the characters themselves. And we could do things like experiment around with the texture patterns and the actual finer details on the weapons themselves. I like the idea that it kind of combines the concept of organic with artificial or manufactured forged type weapons. So very metallic, but also looking kind of gross and alien, which is kind of the MO for that faction in general. So what we could do first is iterate on the idea of swords. Scale-wise, we'll just kind of keep them these medium-sized ones that could be scaled up or down. We're doing like great swords or even smaller swords like daggers. At this point, I'm just throwing ideas at the wall. Let me check something with my settings here. Okay, yeah. I don't know why my pencil settings seem to be a little bit weird, but it should be okay. What if we did sort of a maybe like a hooked blade? I was originally thinking like a real thin, narrow, almost like a rapier blade, but what if you add kind of a hook shape? I want to say this is similar to a talwar, but I don't want to misquote the weapon. No, talwars are curved. There's a sickle type weapon. I forget what it's called though. I want to say it was Middle Eastern. Let's see if I can find it. There's a sickle sword. What's this one called? You see them in a lot of like RPG and type games. Oh, Shotel. I think that's what I'm thinking of. Which are African. It says Northern Ethiopia. Yeah. Not quite with the sickle all the way out here. Shotel technically starts more at the part right here and it curves way out, so it looks something more like this, which is a really cool design. This one kind of takes a little bit of that and combines it with a more thin bladed sword. Like Elden Ring has a Shotel and it's much more pronounced and curved. It looks like a hand scythe. Now, if we're going to take this design and adapt it, I think the hilt would need to be a lot shorter. Something like that. We get like a cluster of kind of eye things here. Here's a question for you, chat. In any sort of game or setting where you have to choose a weapon, what would you say your favorite either specific weapon or weapon type would be? Like an RPG setting or even a non-RPG setting. It could be a class, it could be a specific weapon from lore or from a game. But what would you say is your favorite weapon type? I'm always curious to see what people say for something like that. Our dragon says high damage kind. Okay, so you're talking about like a heavy weapon? Something that's meant to do a lot of damage all at once? Like crushing damage or slashing damage? Hey, first time chat from Oraplea. Is that how you say your name? Please tell me if I'm saying your name wrong. Or Oraplea. Welcome to the stream. I did see, I got a notice that said you followed yesterday. I don't know if you are coming from one of my peers' communities, or you just happen to find my channel. But either way, welcome. And Orpley says scythes are really cool. Yeah, scythes are pretty neat. They've kind of found their way into a lot of media as time has gone by. I do want to adapt a scythe design for this particular faction. So to give kind of an overview of what we're doing, and Orpley says, saw VOD on YouTube. You seem like a cool guy. Oh, why thank you. That's very kind. I don't know what VOD you saw, since I do a little bit of different types of content, whether it was a gaming stream or an art stream like this or a music stream where we do beatbox stuff. Either way, thanks for stopping by and joining the Space Bees. But I'll explain a little about what we're doing here. We are working on concept sketches for an upcoming project of mine that is due out in the fall. As part of my content and things I do here on the internets, I make royalty-free BGM tracks for content creators like streamers or YouTubers to use for their projects. The stuff you hear in the background on my streams is from my BGM playlist of stuff that I've released on Bandcamp or Spotify or Tidal. And I started doing that way back when I first became a VTuber because I was getting tired of getting claimed for using music. So I decided to make my own. But coming up in Halloween is the next major release after the one that's due out for the end of summer. And for the Halloween project, we are doing some character designs that are going to be part of the art for the video when that project debuts. And we'll talk a little bit about the factions and whatnot that are involved in the project, but we are sketching out some ideas for concepts to use for that later. And I've been slowly chipping away. I think we need to get some definite character sketches done today so I could start working on final renders. But we're starting with weapons. And I see Red Dragon has redeemed drop a beat. Okay. Let us do that first. Let me pause the BGM. Make sure I don't forget to turn it back on. So the drop a beat redeem, again, for those who may not have seen it before, when that gets redeemed, I have to stop what I'm doing, put on my headphones, and I got to improvise. I've got to improvise a beat on the spot. So let us do that before we resume the arting. And I haven't been thinking about what I'd want to do for a beat, but I'll come up with something. So let's give it a try. All right, make sure to turn off my headphones and turn on the BGM. One time I forgot to turn it back on. It was just dead silence while I was yapping at the microphone for like 20 minutes, which is very embarrassing. But in line with what Red Dragon was saying before, as far as what we do here, every once in a while we'll do Beatbox Jam streams here on stream on Twitch, and I'll kind of talk through beatbox technique, sound theory, and practice stuff for people who might be interested in learning. And we also do BGM brainstorming, kind of like we're doing here with the drawings, where I use my loop station and synthesizer to create the BGM tracks that I was talking about earlier. And the chat gets to kind of come along for the ride and also participate and give me ideas about things for tracks too. I'll probably do for one of those next week. We'll see when the schedule goes up. Or please says, that's so cool. Oh, thank you. I need to get a little bit better at improvising, freestyling on the, on the spot. I need to remember to clear the redeems at some point. I will do that later. Oracle says, I really like the vibe. I'll probably try sticking around regularly. Well, feel free to hang out whenever you feel like it. We try and keep things pretty chill here, whether it's playing random video games or doing drawing stuff or music or whatnot. We try and be pretty low key. So if chill vibes are your thing, then you probably enjoy your stay here. My community is really cool. In fact, because I always forget, my community has a Discord, the Space Bees. Yep, I got it, Red Dragon. I quick draw you there. We have a small Discord community of people who can hang out and chill with the other cool folks, and also see updates for stuff I'm working on. It has links to the stuff I've released as well, if it makes it a little bit easier to find if you're so inclined. I don't like to show my stuff too much. I know it's really obnoxious when content creators do that. But links to my work is in my channel description. And if you saw it on YouTube, I link stuff there too. So I'm not going to belabor the point. If you feel so compelled to check it out, feel free. And if you happen to be a streamer or content creator yourself, just general disclaimer since people ask, you don't need to ask permission to use my music for stuff. If you have like a YouTube video or whatever and put a credit on the content somewhere, that's all I ask. People don't need to come to me and say, hey, can I use your stuff for this? It's meant to be royalty-free stuff for people to just use. Responsibly, of course. Alright. This particular sword's kind of weird looking. This looks like a Soul Edge weapon from Soul Calibur. Oracle says, I think it's normal to show off when you've done great work. It deserves the attention. Yeah, I guess you're right. Again, I feel like I'm still learning the music creation side. I don't have a background in production or anything like that, so I'm still learning and getting better. I'm working on a secret project that you folks know nothing about, but is going to be out in August, unrelated to the BGM stuff. And I really want to spill the beans on it, but let's just say it's different. I've been putting it off, and a confluence of events has gotten me to actually record something that's not an instrumental BGM track, but it's for something specific, so I can't talk about it right now, but it'll be out in the middle of August. It's pretty much done. I just need to edit a video for it. Now this one almost looks like kind of like a scimitar, a little bit more straight instead of curved. But I don't know how practical it would be as a weapon. It would hurt, but all of the weird curvy bits might be a little bit strange. It could be like a spell catalyst for weapon 2. So to kind of recap the project, again, for folks who may be seeing this for the first time, the project for Halloween, the Halloween album rather, the theme is a war between 2 factions. And I'll show some concept art we've been working on stream, off and on here. There are 2 factions. The first of which, let me zoom out a bit so it's easier to see, are a sort of celestial angelic faction. Not angels per se, since I'm not really defining like heaven versus hell or anything like that for the sake of the project, but it's a divine or angelic type faction called the Ethereal Legion, which, again, name was suggested, or a variation of the name was suggested by Red Dragon, who's hanging out here. But the whole idea of this faction is that they're kind of like armored, biblically accurate angel type, like armored knight adjacent and divine type of beings. And so that's one side. And these are just rough sketches. We brainstormed these kind of on stream collectively. And this is throwing ideas at the wall, and I'll explain what I'm going to use them for in a sec. The other faction, which should be right here, where are you here, is called the Natural Order. And forgive my terrible handwriting. I could have been a doctor. My handwriting sucks. But the other faction fighting the Legion are the Natural Order. And this is a much more druidic, pagan-ish type of organization. So there, it's like the natural gods, the old gods. Lovecraftian. I do like Lovecraftian stuff, so kind of working some of that in here. So like a druidic, shamanistic group that's allied with the old gods versus the Legion, which is more divine in their background. And so for the Natural Order, what we were brainstorming is characters that have a lot of like natural elements to their designs and outfits, armor and whatnot. So a lot of bone, shell, adornments like charms. Let me get my pencil back here. So little decorations like charms and stuff here, or ornamental things, jewelry and whatnot that you'd see on, again, a more kind of like shamanistic type of group. And the whole idea of the music album, again, it's not high concept, but it's a really interesting thing I wanted to play with for this year's project. The whole concept of the album is the story of the war between these 2 factions. And so there's 14 tracks. I think chat has seen 1 or 2 before that I've previewed a long time ago. But there's 14 tracks, and what I want to do is have 7 tracks represent one side, and the other 7 represent the other. And each track is going to have a character from that faction that's going to be shown off in the music video, in quotes. The compilation video, which I do for all of these releases, usually it's just a simple like slideshow, or I'll feature the album art. I still need to get commissioned album art for this one. I gotta work on that too. But as the video compilation shows off the tracks, it'll be, here's track 1, here's the character, then track 2, the next character will pop in. And so I need 14 characters from both sides. And the whole reason for the brainstorming is to come up with ideas that I can pick and choose from in order to draw the characters ultimately and put them into the compilation video. Usually I will work with artists I know or artist mutuals, because I'm a fairly average subpar artist. I like concepting, but my fully rendered work is not as polished as some of my peers who are dedicated artists. But I wanted to try and do it myself this time and just see. So on stream we've been coming up with sketches for the different factions. These are just headshots, obviously. But we've also, where are you? You're down here. We were sketching out some ideas for the different sides and things to potentially adapt into more detailed things later. So this one was done early on. This is an example of an armored warrior or knight type from the Celestial faction, the Legion, and a caster. And one thing we did was we added in like these halos, kind of show the divine allegiance. And we did a couple for the natural order too, but I don't feel like they haven't had as much. This was sort of some rough, crude sketches of like a mage and then some weaponry. Like right here, if you can see my cursor, it's kind of like a thorn vine sword and like a spider shield and an octopus bow. I should name my layers Red Dragon. That's true. If I was a respectable artist, I'd do that. I can roughly remember where I put stuff because I have thumbnails I can see next to my head here. This one is one of the more complete designs. This is the kind of mushroom samurai type prototype design for the natural order. This one I'm going to use. I just need to figure out what I want to do to adapt it further. This is just a rough sketch of like a standing shot of the character. But like taking the sort of wandering samurai hat and making it a mushroom cap. It might be hard to see here, but it's basically like a mushroom mage. Like a mushroomancer almost. This was another one from the natural order, more of a Templar or warrior type. Pretty simple. The helmet or mask needs some work, but we talked about the idea of having animal skulls and really kind of long draping garments like robes or furs, like animal pelts too potentially, versus the really polished and shiny armor of the Celestial faction. And they're supposed to be kind of gross too, like biblically accurate angels adapted into armor form. So that's kind of the end goal. And we'll do some more weapon brainstorming here. We'll see how it turns out, Oracly. This is a kind of ambitious project, but I'm very interested to start putting ideas together, and we'll see how it materializes. I didn't answer the weapon type question, I realize, which I will explain a little bit. I know Red Dragon talked about heavy weapons, heavy damaging weapons. Oracly mentioned scythes, right? My favorite weapon type in general, not just in fiction or in video games or whatnot, are pole arms. I think I've mentioned on chat here before, but I've got a bit of a martial arts background a long time ago. I'm very old, but I like distance weapons. So like a bow staff is what I've got a background in, but I do like pole arms in general. Dex weapons. I'd be probably a dex build versus a strength build. So to that end, let's draw some pole arms. Spears. But even beyond the simple concept of a spear, I do like halberds, partisans, naganatas from like Japanese. Things that let you keep your distance from an opponent and zone them out. Which is funny because in fighting game terms, I prefer to play rushdown and I don't like to zone. But if I was to choose my weapon in real life, it would definitely be something that has a medium to longer distance without being a ranged weapon like a bow. So we could set this one up kind of like a spear. Orpley says, everything sounds good in general. The effort you're putting in is awesome. I'm sure the end result will be great. Hopefully. As long as it's interesting. You know, I'm not a professional by any means. I just care that the project is interesting. This is probably shaping up to be more like a partisan here, or halberd. I did mention on the topic of releases, just to clarify something I said earlier, the Halloween project's not next on the docket. It's just the next big one after the one coming up. I haven't set a release date yet because I got to coordinate with my friend artist that worked on the art with me. But the next project is going to be Shaken, Stirred, and Chilled, which is a mellow, kind of a down tempo, chill type of release compared to something more energetic or heavy. And that's due out before the end of the summer. Right now, it's probably going to be first week in August is my plan. But we will be debuting it on stream. I worked with one of my peers and fellow artist, Pups. They did the artwork for the album, which came out really awesome. And so we'll be talking about it on stream, both from an art perspective and a music perspective, which is what we usually do for the releases. We'll bring on the folks that I collabed with to create the project and just talk about it. And so that's coming up relatively soon, around the end of July. I just haven't scheduled it yet. Red Dragon says, speed weapons are the best. If I had to pick a weapon for me to use, it would have to be daggers. Okay. So would you go dual wield or would you go single dagger? Because I feel like typically you'd think like a rogue or assassin type would dual wield, right? But then it means you have no defense. Versus like dagger and shield or something like that to deflect. Yeah, single wield dagger. What would you have in the offhand then? Defensive item like a shield? Immediately when I think of dual wielding smaller type weapons, my brain goes to Monster Hunter, which we do a lot of Monster Hunter here on the channel. But dual wielding smaller swords, dual blades, a little bit different in function than something like daggers. Similar idea though, but in the Monster Hunter world, you're more looking at evasion if you're going to be dual wielding like that. Versus daggers would be stealth, usually, right? Oh, okay. So like two-handing single dagger. Gotcha. I didn't know you were trained in dagger combat. That's cool. All right, let's do more of a spear type here. Boy, that's not symmetrical at all. I like the concept behind spears as a ranged weapon, but I feel like if I was going to go for like a straight piercing weapon instead of something more slashing like this one over here, I'd need something in the offhand to potentially defend like spear and shield. Or if I was going to go like staff, like a bow, then probably not, but it would be more of kind of a defensive and offensive weapon. But they're not sharp. So it'd be more bludgeoning, I guess, for a bow. You think of like Japanese martial arts. Red Dragon says, my Star Wars OC is a shield. So like gun plus shield? Now, I'm assuming you don't mean like a shield that doubles as a gun. Which, that's a thing. You know, Final Fantasy, was it 8 did the gun sword thing. Anything can be a gun if you try hard enough. I live in America. Maybe we can put some sort of barbs here. Which could be used to sideswipe people, I guess. Ah, okay. Shield plus gun. I gotcha. I feel like that's not a super common combination of weapons. Like my brain goes to like a riot shield, like law enforcement, but usually they go like baton and shield. They don't go firearm plus shield. So the idea of like a defensive item plus a projectile firearm is kind of interesting. Maybe I haven't seen enough literature, but I feel like that's not super common. All right, let's do some scythe concepts too as part of the polearm section here. There's no real rhyme or reason for this. I'm just coming up with ideas. We need to do shields too. Some of the armored Legion warriors would definitely be like a heavy defensive line for shields, like a hoplite. Taking some of the unit terms from Unicorn Overlord, which I've played recently. So this one's going to be a scythe, but let's see what we can do to kind of iterate on the idea of a scythe, since, again, popular weapon, shows up in a lot of literature, a lot of video games. My favorite VTuber uses a scythe, but we want to put kind of like a biblically accurate angel theme on this one. Red Dragon says, I love attacking with the shield. You mean attacking with a weapon plus a shield, or attacking with the shield itself, like using it to push or bludgeon? Orpley says, imagine a scythe with wings and it just flies away mid-battle. You know what? I think you're onto something there. Not necessarily from a flying away mid-battle, but because it's an angelic faction, what if we used the wing pattern and work that into the actual scythe? So like, that's gonna be a little bit tough to do, but like gilded or feathered wings that form the blade of the scythe like this. That, I'm pretty sure, is not super common with the scythe. Yeah, kind of like an upside down wing, but I imagine it would be like really, really sharp. I don't know what they call the stiff portions of the feathers, but like that would be like metal, so it's almost like metallic but shaped like feathers and wings and layered like this. You can even continue the eye motif moving down. I honestly can't think of an instance where I've seen this in a character concept. Someone's got to have done it before, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. But it wouldn't be soft and billowy. It would have that appearance, but it'd be sharp. Like, this is a cutting, slashing type weapon. You get hit with the edges on this thing, like right here and on this side. That's gonna be very painful. And on the topic of attacking with a shield, Red Dragon means attacking with the shield itself. So like bludgeoning or crushing damage or being able to shove someone. Red Dragon says, soften to focus mana into it to make it hard. Another idea for a weapon like this one that we're drawing here, it could be that it changes shape. So it might be in like a relaxed form, straight, or you can change it to make it curved for cutting. So if you straightened it out, let's see, it would look like this. It would be pointed. This is a real rough approximation, but if this is the part right here where it's connected, this would be stabbing. And then the rest of it goes down here like that. But if you wanted to either, like Red Dragon saying, channel magic or something through it, and it changes its shape so it's more curved like down here, then you can use it to cut instead of pierce. Like this one right here would be armor piercing, using it to stab through protection. This one down here would be for cutting, to cut through armor or sever body parts or something like that. Yeah, good name for it could be Bloodwing. Very, very literal. These are supposed to be eyes. Let me draw some googly eyes. This would be like pupils. I like that. That's a really cool concept. I gotta think of which type of unit would use this one. Probably a forward line meleeer, I imagine. That is a cool idea. Good job, Orpley. I'm going to use that for something. When we move over to look at characters, we might be able to come up with one that would make sense thematically to match this up. Okay. Let's switch gears and come up with some sketches for the other faction, for the natural order. First, let's save. I should be saving more often. Orpley says, fighting for my life in Baldur's Gate right now. Oh, nice. I have not played Baldur's Gate yet. It's on my list to get to eventually, but a ton of my friends have played it. And they really like it. I know it's probably one of the better games to come out in the last few years. It's on my list to get to eventually. Okay, weapons. Natural order. Orpley says, I recommend it. It's so good when you're trying not to romance Astarion, which I unfortunately am. Oh, believe me, I've seen quite a bit of discussion on the internets about the flamboyant vampire boy. And most of the people I know were playing through it solo, multiple runs and whatnot, and really enjoyed it. Very open-ended in the different ways you can kind of approach story and the characters and like romance routes and all that good stuff. You love to see it. Okay, so to start off here, I mentioned before that this faction is very kind of shamanistic or druidic compared to the divine side. So one thing we talked about in previous streams is the idea of catalysts or conduits for casting magic. Again, appealing to like the natural old gods of yore. I imagine summoning would be a big thing for this particular faction. So staves and things that would be carved from wood or maybe stone or crystalline ore would be very common. And using adornments like animal parts, feathers, teeth, bone, and whatnot on the weapons themselves would be pretty common. Let me do something real quick. My tablet is not being as responsive as it should be. First, we'll save this. I'm going to try and run a recalibrate on this thing real quick. You guys won't be able to see this because it's not shared, but I'm going to do this right here with the software. Yeah, it's way better. Huh. I guess it's just been so long since I used my drawing tablet that it needed to be recalibrated. Now it's working better. So what we can do is experiment around with some ideas on some staves, and we'll go into other weapons as well, since it's not just casters. The natural order isn't meant to be solely just mages or kind of priests or anything like that. It's still a mix of different roles, so warriors and the like, and trying to draw them out to be unique and different from the Legion is going to be a challenge. Also very kind of, again, nature and plant based is another thing we talked about before. So not only just animals and animal bits, but we talked about that mushroom mage before. So also like trees, tree roots, and the like are also things we could put into the designs and equipment. So this one is supposed to be kind of like a, oh, I'm going to round a room here. A tree staff. Let's move you. Talking about pole arms, instead of just being a catalyst, this could actually be a spear-like weapon. We wouldn't want the adornments too close to the pointy bits on this one. So maybe there's some parts here to be charms. Orpley says, a weapon where vines or something could spread out and immobilize an enemy would be cool. I'm thinking running along those ideas, like a whip. Something maybe inspired by like a cat o' nine tails, like that whip that has a lot of individual tassels. It would be more plant-based instead. Kind of like, was it Kurama from Yu Yu Hakusho, the pretty boy? Yokai guy. He uses like a thorn vine whip, I think. Been a while since I've read Yu Yu Hakusho. But I do like that idea. We'll do that next. And we'll put that one down here. Save some more room. I do think this particular faction would use bladed weapons, but it would probably be like maybe a type of crystalline ore or stone, even a really durable stone blade type weapon. Okay, so we want the idea of a whip. Thinking, keeping the plant theme going here, kind of like a stalk you'd see on a plant. But the actual things that come out would be vines like this, and drawing individual thorns. I can see now it's going to be a pain, but let's give it a try. I'm not going to draw them all the way down. We'll just put the ideas here to get the concept across. Red Dragon says I should get back into drawing my GITS world. Yeah, that's your OC kind of concept and project, right? Yeah, there's no time like the present. You have the tools, right? Yeah, your story and your book. I am guilty of not putting as much time into my story work and whatnot. This stuff that we've been doing for these projects is not connected to that. But interestingly enough, I think I talked about this a while back, but I'll mention it again. I have been spending a lot of time lately experimenting with songwriting for lyrics and using tools like Suno to take my lyrics for songs and create songs with them. So, again, I know AI is a hot topic right now, of course, but I've had some really interesting results utilizing Suno's generation to take my lyrics and put them into song form. And some of the material I was using for those songs, just to, again, keep it on topic why I'm even mentioning it, is based on stuff I've written. So at least 2 songs that I've created using all that stuff was with lyrics that were inspired by characters or things from the stories I've written. And I'm currently working through some editing and processing stuff where I figure out what I want to do with that. I don't know if they're going to be full releases for that specifically. There is some other stuff unrelated to like the story-based content I want to use, but it's been very interesting experimenting around with the tools. Again, I know not everyone's gonna like the fact that it's AI, which I get, but just being able to practice writing, writing song structure and lyrics and different composition stuff, and seeing what a vocal construction would do with that is interesting. I see. Red Dragon did an opening for your project. Okay, I could spend all day drawing these thorns. Orpley says, it may be AI, but it has your effort in it, so it's fine. Yeah, again, I'm not too worried about like the optics and public perception of something that's not going to be part of an official release, but I get the stigma. One thing that I do think is good about Suno is you can't use likenesses. So I couldn't say, have Taylor Swift sing me this song about, running people over in my car. It won't let you use someone's likeness, which is good. Interestingly enough, I don't know why, and I'm going to assume it's because of what it was trained on. A couple of iterations of something I've been writing based on some characters, or a character from one of my stories, I wanted it to be female vocals, right? And I just said, female vocals. And what it generated from the vocal side sounded a lot like Morty Calliope. Very, very eerily similar, which is interesting. I knew I couldn't use that because it sounds like Callie is singing a song she didn't create, which on its own would be kind of funny, but I was like, I wonder why. I wonder if it's the combination of things it's creating that type of voice. I know it's not the only one because I've done other project stuff using that, and it hasn't kind of replicated her singing style, but I just thought that was really interesting. I'm like, that sounds like a very well-known VTuber. Hey, Snake redeemed a hydrate. What's up, Snake? Welcome to the stream. We are working on weapon ideas for the upcoming Halloween project. I hope you're having a good evening so far. Red Dragon says AI is good if used as a tool. Yeah, again, it is a constantly evolving topic, and I know from all fronts there is quite a bit of opinions on its use. The art side, I think, is a lot more potentially abusable right now, but even with the music stuff too, it just depends. I think using it as a tool instead of a replacement for complete production to me is more ethical, but the two big companies that do AI music, Suno and Udio, got sued by the record labels recently, and I'm very curious to see how that pans out, because unless they can show that they used artist material to train without consent, there'll be no lawsuit. They won't win, the record companies. But whatever happens is going to be a big precedent setter for AI content in general. And that I'm really curious to see how it plays out. Okay. So for the whip here, Oriply, I don't know if this is in line with what you're talking about with a vine-based weapon that can snare and immobilize. But to me, if we were going with the plant route, something like this would kind of fit. But I had this idea in my head that this particular weapon here, in addition to like a lashing or snaring type weapon, the tendrils or vines could be potentially bound together or braided together to create like a piercing weapon. I had something that I showed earlier on that was kind of taking that idea. It looked like a bunch of vines twisted together into a point. One thing that could be a possibility for this one here is that, just like the scythe one, it's got two states, like a relaxed state where it can be lashed about like a regular whip, or a kind of hardened state where it can be created into a piercing weapon, like a rapier or like a sword. Yeah, like Red Dragon saying, like whip it into a sword, or even if you look at literature or video games, a snake sword. They had snake swords in. They had a sword cane in Bloodborne. That's not the same thing. But you think about Ivy from Soul Calibur. She has a sword that comes apart like a whip. Or Renji from Bleach. For those who've seen Bleach, she has a snake sword that can kind of whip around or be rigid and straight like a blade. Yeah, I think Ivy is what came to mind initially. The queen of subtlety when it comes to character designs in video games. Okay, let's think about some more melee type stuff for the natural order. I was thinking of taking Red Dragon's idea of daggers and adapting that here. I'm thinking bone daggers specifically. That is very impractical. Maybe a little bit too out there. But we take that design and give it kind of a hilt. And maybe we kind of curve it more. We were talking about shotels earlier. But here's a question that I asked the chat earlier, Snake, since you're tuning in. I asked the chat to tell me what their favorite weapon type is. Whether it's a specific weapon or a class that you'd find in something like a video game or other literature. For folks who are jumping on, since we've had that discussion, what are your favorite weapon types? Could be, again, class, like ranged, melee, or a specific weapon like a greatsword, or dual blades, or anything from popular media. Zach says, to be honest, I always like brawler types, people who like kind of improvise fighting not only with their fists but nearby objects. So how do you feel about like fist type weapons like gauntlets or a cestus, where it's very, very short range, but it's basically like either piercing or pummeling people with the weapon? Or are you going more the martial art route, like unarmed strike monk style? I think didn't you say you played a monk in one of your D&D campaigns or something? I honestly can't remember. Snake says, I also like short blade, typically stuff that would not do a lot of damage in the game but are fast enough that DPS is crazy. Yeah, you probably fall into a similar type of category as Red Dragon. He was saying that he likes daggers. So like a single dagger, but built for kind of speed and quick damage. And that's what I'm kind of drawing here. This is a very like jagged bone dagger. Could do something similar in concept to what we had on the angelic factions, but instead of eyes, it would be like gemstones, or like precious minerals or ore that are set in as decorations. Maybe they're conduits for magical energy or something like that, or just decorative. Needs to be set into the hilt of the dagger like this. Snake says, I would also like two-handed katanas like Sephiroth's sword if you actually held it right. So that's like the long sword in Monster Hunter. A cutting weapon, but meant to be wielded with two hands instead of like a single-handed shorter blade katana. Those types of weapons are cool. One thing that I always worry about is defense, though. Parrying with weapons like that is usually, I think, what people do, but you can't block. They're not meant to be like a block type weapon, so you either have to outspeed the enemy or be able to parry. And while I do like parry mechanics in video games and the like, in real life, I think I'd want to block more than be able to parry. Alright, I got an idea for a heavier weapon for the Natural Order. We talked about stone. So this would be, it'll hopefully come together as I draw the rest of the details, but this is like a stone greatsword, but more of like a bludgeoner type instead of cutting. So more like hitting someone with a slab of stone, kind of like the Dragon Slayer from Berserk, but this has even less of an edge. It's more like a really long hammer almost for crushing armor or crushing mounts. Snake says you're talking to a character action fan. We love to parry. Oh, I hear you, brother. When we talked about Royal Guard and DMC, I love parry mechanics. I just don't trust my reflexes to be able to do it in real life. Don't get me wrong. I've gravitated towards parry type weapons in a lot of gaming content, which is weird that it took me so long to get into the lance in Monster Hunter, because it's all parries. It's blocking, but it's also being able to parry and then counter. So much fun. I'm really looking forward to playing the lance again in Wilds. Seeing what they do. I mean, gun lance is still my favorite weapon if we're talking Monster Hunter, but I was surprised with how much I enjoyed playing the lance. Just getting in something's face and poking it while shrugging off, parrying, or blocking any sort of attacks and just staying right on the target. Turns out that's a lot of fun if you can read the tells correctly. Snake says, I love that photo of Max at Evo. You're talking about the one where he's got his arms crossed with his back to the camera overlooking the floor? Yeah, it's very powerful energy. I need to go and watch the Evo competition at some point. I want to watch the Street Fighter 6 stuff. See how high level play that was. They did Guilty Gear 2, right? For Strive. They had the announcements for the DLC. I definitely want to watch those matches as well. I am very excited for Venom coming back. He was my main in Guilty Gear Double X and Accent Core. I didn't play XR, but he probably wouldn't have been my main in that if I played it. Okay. So for this sort of greatsword looking thing, I'm trying to add like rocky texture to it. It's gonna make it look kind of veiny, but just imagine that this was like a slate or like a granite color. So like gray, kind of craggy. I imagine it would be kind of like an enchanted stone, so it wouldn't just be brittle and break. But much like Guts' weapon in Berserk, it would be able to crush things more so than cleave, because it's got no edge, no sharp bladed edge. It's just you're being hit with something extremely heavy. Snake says, I'm surprised Lucy's a DLC character. Yeah, I don't think anyone had Cyberpunk guest character on their bingo card for guest characters in Guilty Gear. I know nothing about Cyberpunk, so I don't know what that character is about, but aesthetic wise I could see it fitting since Guilty Gear is very futuristic, right? But we'll have to see how she plays. The other new character, Unica, and I don't know if Unica is supposed to be male or female because I don't know the character, but apparently they're from the anime. But really curious to see what the gameplay is there. Snake says, I thought of anybody from Cyberpunk Edge Runners that would have been Rebecca. Oh yeah, I'm very surprised it wasn't that character, but maybe that's why they did it, because it would have been too obvious. Alright, I'm running out of space here, but I want to try and do some ideas for shields too, like heavier shields for Natural Order. We didn't do that for the Legion, but that's okay. we're gonna do like a tower shield, but more of a head-on render here. And for this, I was originally thinking like a tree trunk almost. So very kind of twisted and knotted and gnarled. But just like we did for the other faction, we add in the adornments to give it some more detail. So kind of like they have the ceremonial braided ropes on the like the Japanese tree. I don't know what that's called. I should know what that's called, but I don't. Where they have the sacred things tied around trees. I was thinking kind of something like that. What we do is have maybe tied around the midsection of the tree trunk, but have like these charm or talisman things that are hanging from it. Seems kind of impractical, but the idea would be like an enchantment of sorts that reinforces the power of the shield itself, since it's like a tree trunk you're using. But if it's enchanted, then it's going to be stronger. Alright, let's go ahead and save our progress. We need to get on to actually sketching characters. So I think what I want to do is come up with some primary poses, and we could do like several of them just on a blank sheet. And they don't have to be assigned to a faction necessarily. But we do that, and then from there maybe we start to distill it down to, okay, this one would be a good pose for like a mage character. This one would be a good pose for like a warrior type, an armored type, meleeer. Because I don't know how much screen real estate I'm going to have when I eventually do the compilation video. It can't be too cluttered, so these aren't going to be really big elaborate characters, but I want them to be fully realized so I can use them for other things later, like if I want to put the design on a shirt, or I want to create a more fleshed out scene instead of just having them be like from the waist up or cut off. I want them to be full top to body renders of the characters. So to that end, I'm going to work a little bit close here. It's easier to do for primaries. And let's think of some poses that we can use. I'm thinking definitely having a sort of front-facing camera for looking straight on like this. Kind of lunging. The movement is moving this way, and the character's looking this way, but they're sort of front facing the camera. And what we've done in the past, I'm not a good dynamic pose artist. I've said that a million times. I like doing just standing neutral poses for concepts to show off the design in detail instead of a real dynamic perspective. So this is a good way to practice not just doing a neutral standing 3/4 pose facing one direction. Even though if I had my way, all of the concepts would look like that and it'd be very boring. So what I've done in the past is I've worked at a real small scale like this until I like the pose, and then I scale it up to get the proportions a little bit better, and then start using that to draw the actual character. And it doesn't matter which direction they're facing because I can just flip the perspective. We're mostly going for kind of some flavor and the personality of the character, as it were. And we're not worrying too much about the specifics like the gender or anything. These are just supposed to be neutral. No specific bits on these, just more pose and perspective of what they're doing. Since one thing I mentioned before that folks might have heard me talk about on one of these streams, the characters from each faction, I may throw in some specifics as far as the designs if I want to, but you're not supposed to be able to really discern the gender of the characters. All of the characters featured on both factions are pretty much fully covered in one way or another. They're either fully armored or they're fully covered in like the robes or things for like the natural order, and you don't actually see skin. Kind of like Persona, which I know is a rule for the concepts in the Persona series. The Persona, you can't see their physical skin. They're covered under their outfits, armor, or whatnot. I kind of like that idea, but that doesn't mean there won't be some more obvious things behind the characters. I haven't gotten there yet, but I think that leaves it open to interpretation more than anything else, which is, to me, more interesting. It could be whatever you want. It's more, what's the function of the character? So this is more of kind of a standing, it could even be a hovering, now that I think about it. If we just change this foot a little bit so it's not flat and make it more angled like this. This could be like a hovering in the air type of pose for like a mage or caster type character. Or since the Etherean Legion are angelic, they could even be just flying or hovering. So that's definitely a possibility for that one. We're going to just sort of shotgun a bunch of different pose ideas and see what we come up with. And I got an idea for a sword wielding character here. It's going to get a little muddy because we're working so close in, but it should be obvious what I'm trying to do here. This is like a two-handed sword holding pose, facing the camera, kind of like the first one we did, but this is more of like a wide stance, not quite horse stance. Kind of leaning a little bit, but not quite as lunging like the first one, I think. Again, channeling some berserk energy here, but if we have the sword, just a placeholder rough sword here, this is the kind of pose of someone facing this way, but holding sword at the ready. Pretty kind of generic sword guy or lady pose, but I think if we did something really unique with the design and the outfit, it would still be effective. grab a drink real quick. I probably have to go refill my water bottle in a bit. Let's see. We could try and do a ranged unit pose too. We talked about the idea of having archers, bow users, which I'm not opposed to, both on both sides, I think. But let's see, would we want to do? Now I gotta think. How do people normally stand when they're firing a bow? Usually kind of anchored. You wouldn't want to be like leaning or off balance when shooting a bow. Let's see. This is more straight on. This would be facing this way and holding the bow. I don't think that's necessarily the angle we need to go. It doesn't need to be an action shot. It could just be a character holding a bow. If we did something a bit more neutral and standing, like so, kind of standing upright and holding the bow instead of like actually having it drawn and ready to fire. Sort of then and be kind of, again, more like standing at rank, in rank and file. Is it just me, or am I starting to scale these smaller and smaller? I think I am. Like I mentioned before, it ultimately won't matter, since if I end up pulling these, and using them to adapt into a sketch, I'm going to scale them up and then flesh in the proportions even more. Alright, let's take a look at what we got so far. We got 4 different poses, not a bad start. Ultimately, we need 14, and each one doesn't need to be completely unique. It doesn't need to be 14 completely different poses, because that'd be pretty difficult. But they want them to be at least distinct, so it's not just character A is using one pose, character B it's the exact same pose, and whatnot. But we can kind of play around with some ideas and see as we experiment. All right. Let's think about the other unit types we'd have. We could go for another good pose that would work for a caster. Originally, I was thinking this is gonna be tough because I'm not super good at drawing this particular perspective, but I was thinking a character sort of hunched over and kneeling on the ground, getting ready to set like a summon. Oh boy, this is not great. But thinking about, is it Naruto where they put their hand on the ground and they summon the different familiars or animals? That's a little bit beyond my perspective drawing, I think. But we could take that idea and think about another sort of like a ready stance or even like a concentration stance that a caster would take. Let's see. I don't know why I have the head so far down like that. In fact, we don't need that. I definitely think we want kind of a more hunched over, like so, but give more of a neck. The neck doesn't disappear completely. That would be just silly. What we could do, I just thought about this here. We have the arm raised here, kind of like chanting or casting a spell to summon something. Almost looks like a kind of like a ritualistic dance too. I just thought about that as well. Here we can kind of have a similar pose on this arm as well. And looking at this, if we were to just rotate it slightly, almost looks like a victory pose too. This is a you did it pose, or I did it pose. But it could also be kind of like, again, a ritual, a casting ritual, with like a runic circle or something like around and magical energy like that. That looks like a shower, but you kind of get my meaning. Okay. What else? What else? What would be another potential pose we can utilize for the cast? Oh, we could go for like a heavy type unit. We talked about using shields and how shields would come into play for like a defensive unit. We could have more of a bracing stance, similar to one of the other ones, but this would be for a shield unit. Those legs are absurdly long. could do a little bit better with our proportions than that, even though it's just a rough primary. It's a wide stance. Wouldn't necessarily need to be that wide. But the idea would be and I'm thinking about the perspective here. I was thinking like holding a shield. But this way is like sideways. You don't see the shield at all. It's like it's facing directly this way, all right? But you don't actually see the shield, which I don't think that's necessarily effective in showing off the design and the character. Red Dragon asks, would it be closer to the body? I was thinking like a defensive line, kind of like a phalanx. So like the character as part of would be putting the shield out to potentially deflect incoming damage in a formation, not just on their own. But in doing it from that perspective, you don't see the shield, because we can go like this as well. But then what are you guarding? It's like the shield is, you can see it, but it doesn't show you what the character is guarding. I gotta think about that, because we could do a neutral standing one where the shield is just being held and not being actively used to block, which may work better. I'm gonna have to give that some thought, because here's what I was thinking. If we did it this way, well, that's a really it's really tall shield. This would be more like a heraldic shield. It has a massive shield, but you kind of get what I'm saying here. If we did it this way, like this, it's blocking kind of towards the camera if you did it that way, which is not impossible. It's really more the character is facing kind of angled towards the camera, if that makes sense. Where's my pencil? There it goes. We're on white for some reason. So kind of like the character is facing like this direction and blocking in this direction. It's a little bit of a weird angle. But we could do it. I don't know. I might have to experiment around with that a bit more. Should make sense. We were talking about spear and shield earlier. Might be able to do like pole arm like this. Yeah, I don't know. That's a bit more of a tougher one to crack, because I do want to have a heavily armored character to feature, but the poses needs to be something that makes sense. Or just, again, if we did the alternate, we did neutral like this. Three-quarters, like we were talking about before. Just standing kind of at attention or in a ready stance, not actively moving in a certain direction. And like the shield would be down here. We'd have to make sure that the placement of the limb makes sense and the person doesn't have like a disproportionately long arm, but we did that and made sure it matched up. Then you see like the entire outward facing designs of the shield itself. And if this was like the Legion, it'd probably be, we talked about having like a shield with a bunch of eyes on it and plating or runic script to reinforce, like a magical great shield or tower shield. These googly eyes. If it was the natural order, it would probably be like a big skull, or we talked about the tree shield before, like a tree trunk, some sort of natural material. And we have the weapon like this. Another idea that I toyed around with was having like a mouth, like a face on the shield. Kind of Spinal from Killer Instinct, but I don't know, if it was going to be the Legion, it would probably be something that looks very kind of shiny and almost more regal. Or if we went like really kind of alien looking, it could be a mouth. Let's go ahead and save here. Another idea that I just kind of popped in my head would be for like the natural order. We have kind of this more like leaping back type pose, but more side profile. So character facing this way. But to show off like a heavier type of unit, like defensive type, instead of the big tower shield like we had on the previous one, it would be like a big animal skull that's being used like a shield. So if we did that, the arm would be secured somewhere inside. I have to draw that to make sure it looks correct. But we would have like the eye holes and whatnot. And maybe there's different things kind of lashed together to kind of secure it in place. And spikes, or that we talked about the charms or adornments that are on it. And so like something like a massive animal skull has been purposed into a like an oversized gauntlet almost, or like a kind of conical shield that's being held on the inside and being used to defend. I think that'd be kind of unique. In fact, I think this has some potential. And this other arm, we have to do something with it. Maybe do like a fist raised type of pose. I think it makes sense to pair a weapon. But I do want to do something with this. I kind of think this has potential to be translated into a character concept, and then really throw a lot of detail on the animal skulls. Be something big. Now, I'm not saying like a dinosaur, because dinosaurs don't exist in this particular type of universe, but something massive enough that its skull could be used as a whole defensive protection type device. All right, let's see what else can we do. Before we get ready to wrap up, I want to try and knock out a couple more rough primary poses here. We didn't get to full character sketches, but this to me is the harder part. Once I have the rough primary, then I can just pick the characters and start drawing them using this as a base, essentially. Let's see. Could do another caster type pose. Try not to do just a generic T pose, as funny as that would be. This one's more kind of like a arms outstretched-ish type pose. The idea would be that this particular character is doing some sort of channeling or summoning rite. Just kind of got a set solid stance here. And depending on the direction of the head, where the character's looking and where they're facing, I think would depend on what we wanted, but this is kind of like a maybe have like an aura or like a summoning type thing, or some sort of catalyst that shows like this character's doing something with magic energy or something similar. If we didn't want to go that route, we could also just do like weapons out, come at me type pose. There's nothing wrong with that. Kind of looks like the character's getting ready to go see. Not really the intent, but we could do something with that. Okay, how many we got? Let's take stock here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. We need 5 more poses, but we could also do variations on the ones we have here as well. It doesn't need to be 14 completely unique, drawn out ones. Okay. I think what I want to do, first of all, we'll go and save one more time. I want to look at the character concepts, the head shots that we saw before, and I want to select the ones, at least in the first pass, that I want to adapt into fully rendered characters using the poses that we're going to kind of adapt from this here. So I might do more of this offline and see if I can come up with some more poses, but let's take a look at the base sketches here. And I want to mark off ones I definitely want to use, and then we'll see where that leaves us. So I might need to sketch out some more. This is the Legion first. I definitely want to use this one. We talked about how this would be a good caster type design with all of the wrappings and bandages, despite the fact that trying to put runic writing on all those with strips and things would be a giant pain, but I'm not opposed to doing it. I do like this one right here as kind of like a knight type forward melee unit. think one of the other pages, there's another page of Legion concepts that I'll jump to in a sec. I think. But there was an archer type we talked about too. I think this one might have been it. We'll look and see. I definitely like this one. Red Dragon says bottom mid is a good tank. We talked about that one last time. Are you talking about this one, Red Dragon? The second from the left? Because that's the one that I like. I was going to mark that one off too. I think doing like a heavy type unit could be like a good way to show like a big, like heavily armored one. Oh, you're talking about this one. The one with the ponytail? I think one thing we talked about, I can't remember, was this has been like 3 weeks from before. I like the front part of the helmet here on this one, but I do like the ponytail, so maybe we can kind of like combine these two together, because I like the way the eyes, a bunch of the eyes kind of recessed in within this kind of craggy rock-like helmet. But we could even take like this one and give it a ponytail. So between those two, I think we have a good idea for a heavy type unit. So I'm just going to call this one marked off tentatively. Kind of put them together. So that gives us 4. Where is the other page? No, this is natural order. Some of these are getting kind of similar, so I got to be careful. Oh, maybe I didn't do a whole nother page for the Legion. I thought I did. Okay, that's fine. Most of the stuff was on this one anyway. So we would need 3 more if we were to just use this. I do like this one over here. This could be a good caster type. The mask is really unsettling. The concept sketch that I showed her just a second ago that had the 2 Legion ones, the knight and then the caster throwing up the YMCA, could work with this one. That's kind of where the idea came from when I sketched that one out. This one's not bad either. It's okay. I think we could iterate on that a little bit more. Like do something with the wings or the eyes to give it more detail. But that gives us a good start. And that's potentially 6 ideas roughly from here. Again, I don't have to have all 14 marked off right now. That's not critical. Just ideas and designs I want to run with. Here we go. I'm going to group these together so they're easier to find. So for the natural order, I definitely like this one. We were talking about how this could be kind of similar to like a bull skull, the way the horns are for the twin horns. I do like this one that has the animal skull and feathers. But I feel like it'd be a toss-up between this one in the upper left or the bird one that's much more avian in shape with the beak and more feathers. This one here, we talked about the tree mage. The tree mage for sure. I've already started sketching out some ideas for that one. And then we have the mushroom mage samurai. And I don't really know what we would use for this one, but I do like the shape of the mask. This one could be a ranged or archer type. Kind of like the number 3 here. This one would have 2 twin horns going kind of forward. You just can't tell from this angle. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 potentials. I guess it'd be a toss-up between these two. So probably the bird one, like Red Dragon's saying. But if we jumped to this one, this was more ideas for the natural order. I think what we talked about before was, where am I at? This one would be like the heavy armored shield bearer type. This one, I think we could probably do something cool with the giant animal skull using that design. It already looks kind of bony and like heavily armored. This one was an archer type. We talked about how having like the eyes being on retractable stalks, kind of like a snail. Has potential. I'm going to say this one for sure I want to use. This one is tentative with the open circle. We also talked about a scout type last time, I remember. So a really light armored, not combat based, but stealth, infiltration, and speed. That could be something we could do here. The scout. So I think we have enough ideas for the natural order. I may have to go to the drawing board and think about what I want to add for the Legion, but that shouldn't be too difficult. If I map out which character is going to be what role, and then I know what's left, then I can just come up with the ideas to fill that out. And then, of course, we have more weapon ideas that we can experiment with too. We're up here. But I think we have a good base of assets to work off of. I was a little bit concerned that it would take a long time to just come up with some basic ideas and things that I wanted to use on stream today. But you folks brought some really good ideas. That wing scythe idea that we were talking about earlier, I am going to use for something. I was telling Oriply, that's definitely going to get used for a character. But all the other stuff I think can fit pretty well. So I've got some homework to do. I don't know what I'm going to do next drawing stream. I think I may focus on something else and work on this offline, because I don't want to give too much away before the actual project's out. We do need to get back to the Monster Hunter Fusion project. There's a lot of drawing type stuff I've been rotating through, so next time we'll probably do something different. Go back to one of our other ongoing projects. That way we don't just do the same thing, because I think I've done this for 3 streams in a row now. But that's okay. These sessions are primarily to help me get work done, since I'm usually too busy during the week, and come up with ideas that are going to get us some useful results. So that being said, I think I will do one last save, and we will call that for today. Let me take a look at my list and see who is online that we can go raid and spread some chill vibes to. Let's see. Oh, Banani's online. We are almost never streaming at the same time. Let's go raid Banani and see how they're doing. They're doing art as usual. So let me cue that up, and we will go over there and see how Cat and company are doing. So let me go ahead and pause. I'll mute you and go to outro. And that will do it. As soon as everything is live, we will go ahead and raid Banani. So thanks again for hanging out today. It's good to get back into streaming. Again, I appreciate the good ideas and the brainstorming. We will be back tomorrow, unless my work schedule goes sideways again, to pick up in SMT5. I have not done any grinding, so we'll probably just dive in and try and get into the next major area of the game. So until then, Hope everyone has a good rest of your evening, and I will catch you next time. Now let's go see how Banani and company are doing.